Hello everybody! So today I will be reviewing Dark Secret, which comes out officially tomorrow, but I was lucky enough to get an advanced reader's copy, as it says on the top there. So I'm just going to be sharing a few of my thoughts about this book with you guys. I won't be giving spoilers until near the end, and I'll give you a warning beforehand, so don't worry about learning things about the book you didn't necessarily want to know in advance. You'll only get a very sort of generic review at first, sort of letting you know what to expect from it, and then I'll give more details towards the end, which will be spoilery, so you can tune out if you would like. So I'm just going to read the blurb to you guys. So the tagline is, "There's no wrath like that of a witch scorned." So the blurb goes like this. 17-year-old spirit witch Ava Lopez is the self-appointed guardian of the witches and humans of Darkhaven, an idyllic village nestled between the forest and the sea. Her watch? Vicious and bloodthirsty vampires. Ava is a novice in the eyes of her coven. If she expects to protect them in the secrecy of their powers, she must gain better control of her own. When a full moon ritual goes awry, control may be lost forever, and Ava is exiled from her coven. Forced to seek refuge among the beings she had always sworn herself to hunt, she vows revenge on those who have upended her life. But the more time Ava spends away from her coven, the more she discovers a startling truth. The witches haven't been honest with her. Ava's quest to strip the truth from everything she's ever known begins with the toughest realization of all: coming to terms with who she has become. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is the cover of this book, which honestly I'm not really fussed on, because I think the font looks very sort of basic, like an amateur did that on their computer, rather than a proper graphic designer, and the image doesn't really have anything to do with the book itself. Like witches are involved in this story, and they're an important part, but their rituals aren't particularly fire-based, and it's just unrealistic to the whole overarching plot of the story, and I just think it doesn't really convey the way that this book actually makes you feel, which is kind of like more mysterious, more involved. Like, it's dark but not in a fiery way. It's hard to explain without giving spoilers, but this image on the cover doesn't really set the scene for the book. And another thing you notice straight away is it's a very, very thin book. So there's 184 pages in total, but of that only about 170 pages are the actual story. But I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing, because I tend to enjoy shorter stories anyway, because I don't have to focus on them for as long. So I think what's more important is the content and the pacing, and I actually think the pacing is pretty good in this story. So what I will show you is when you open up the book, you can sort of see the top of each chapter has the pentagram symbol and the sort of like black bit along the top. So I think it gives it that extra bit of like vibe, and it makes you sort of feel more involved in the story, and it's quite exciting to get to that at the start of each chapter. However, the first thing I noticed when I first started reading this, and I was just like, oh no, is that this book is written in first person present tense, which is just like absolute far my least favourite narration style. I hate present tense. I think past tense is the best way to tell a story, and I hate first person. Like, it has got its benefits, and it's actually used quite well in this book, in that it lets you really see the thoughts of the main character as they're happening, and I do like that, and I do think it is used effectively in this story. However, just on a personal level, I don't really enjoy that narration style, and while it's not as grating as it has been in some other stories that I've read in that tense, it's still not something I would have personally chosen, and I would have preferred to read the same book in third person past tense, which is, as far as I'm concerned, the best way to write a story is third person past tense, because it doesn't detract from the story. You read the story as it's happening, whereas with first person, I feel sometimes it takes you away from the action in a weird way. Like, because you're more involved, it just feels less realistic. I find that it's harder to connect with. I find that it's more inconvenient to read. Like, that's just a personal preference, but I'm not a big fan. However, it wasn't too bad in this story, so I would say if you personally are like me and you don't enjoy first person present tense, don't immediately write this off, because it does still have its benefits. So the main character, Ava Lopez, she's actually really cool. I really like her. She's not perfect, but I quite like that she's not perfect. I find that a lot of the stories in this sort of like genre tend to have very basic Mary Sue type characters, whereas Ava's actually got a strong personality, she's got strong opinions, and she's got her flaws. Like, she's too stubborn for one, but I quite like that because it makes her seem more realistic and more believable, and it's actually a character you can connect with rather than thinking she's just too perfect. So I do like that about the story, definitely. One thing I would say is I think it rushes through the start of the story too fast. Now, I won't give details about what happens, but there is like it says on the back, when the full moon ritual goes awry, the details of that, I feel that that incident happens way too quickly in the story, and I think that contributes to why it's such a short book. I feel like there easily could have been at least sort of 50 to 60 pages before that incident that would have helped to strengthen the position in the book and strengthen where we are at with Ava at the beginning of the story as opposed to the end, because after she's exiled from her coven, there is a very stark contrast in her personality and how she develops, and I would have liked to get to know the real her before that incident happened so that I could sort of pay attention more to the change that does occur within her. Another thing that I'm not too fussed on in this book is that her mother speaks in Spanish, and it's sort of mentioned by Ava that her mother speaks Spanish, which is fine. But then all her dialogue scenes are written in the Spanish rather than just like italicized or put like in symbols so you know she's speaking Spanish but you can actually read what she said, which kind of leads to these really awkward sentences afterwards where we've got Ava's thought process and she's like translating it sort of roughly in sort of making it seem like she's not translating it, like she's just having those thoughts naturally. And for me, it just doesn't really work. It feels very unnatural and it's very jarring to just technically read the same thing twice just in a different language. Or sometimes it's just not even translated at all, so you have no idea what the mother said, which, you know, this is an English book aimed at an English-speaking audience, and I like, you know, I'm happy to have that diversity. I think it's really cool that there's diversity in having a Spanish-speaking character, but I feel like you can do that without actually writing her entire sentences in Spanish. Ava could mention, like she does, that her mother speaks in Spanish, and then just have all the mother's dialogue in italics, so we can understand what she's saying, but we know that she's saying it in Spanish. So I do feel that, again, is very disconnecting from the story when you're trying to read the dialogue scenes, and each time you're having to just read a sentence that means nothing to you the first time you read it, and then you've got that awkward translation, which detracts from the story, and I think it was a poor choice by the author, which is a shame, because I think she's actually a really talented author. She's, you know, when you're reading the book, even the bits I don't like, it's not like this is poorly written, it's just this is written in a way that I'm not keen on, and I feel like the author could have made a better choice, certainly in regards to the dialogue between Ava and her mother. So the next bit I'm going to get into will contain spoilers, so I would say if you haven't read the book yet and you don't want to know anything really about what happens, I would say stop watching now, because spoilers abound. Okay, so the inciting incident that happens at the full moon ritual is that a bunch of vampires attack and Ava herself is turned into a vampire, which creates some really cool effects. Like, it's really interesting to see that change in her personality and to see her thought processes change and to see her transition from being a witch who hunts and hates vampires to being one of them. That is a really, really cool thing to see, and it's really interesting to learn more about what being a vampire entails and how that affects Ava as someone who's grown up as a witch and has all this witchy knowledge and know-how and knows nothing really about vampires except that they're these vicious beasts. But she's actually taken in by this group of vampires who are kind of like a family, and they're like good vampires, and she starts to slowly realise that the stuff she's been taught about vampires isn't necessarily all true and they're not all bad. But the thing I don't like very much so about this is the vampire who turns her is this guy called Jacek, and her attraction to him just is so annoying to read. Like, I'm fine with being instantly attracted to someone, like on a physical level, that's fine, and it sort of explains that she has this sire bond to him, which again would be better if they went into more detail to explain what that entailed, but I sort of get it. But it's more the fact that we get pretty much the same sentence repeatedly of just her saying, oh, I'm really attracted to him, but I wish I didn't feel this way, I'm supposed to hate him, what's going on? And it's just so obsessive, and she like loves him and doesn't like him at the same time, but it's just repeated so many times that it becomes annoying, and it's like, yes, you said this already, just get on with the story. And it does feel like it kind of slows the story down because you have so many pages dedicated solely to Ava processing her feelings for Jacek, which are exactly the same ones as she's already gone through several pages before. It just repeats it constantly, and it's very annoying to read because you just want to get on with the plot, because the plot itself is actually pretty good. I do like it. Like, it's a little bit sparse in places, but there are certain action scenes which are really cool, and it's interesting to learn about the way these other vampires are living their life, and there is like a cool battle between vampires, which is awesome. But why is there all this angst with her and Jacek? Like, if you want to put in a romance subplot, that's fine, but do it properly. There's no chemistry between the two of them. All of their scenes seem awkward, they seem repetitive, and it's just, like, it could have been better, but Jacek as a character is never really developed in a way that seems realistic. Whenever I'm reading his scenes, it seems almost like I'm reading it through a veil, like, you know, this isn't a real person, this never could, nothing about this seems realistic, and it's not the fact that he's a vampire, I'm fine with that. It's just the way it's written is so unnatural and jarring, and I really don't like it, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I like him well enough as a character, I just really hate the way that Ava thinks about him and the way it kind of stunts her growth as a character, because, you know, she's gone from being this really cool, awesome, independent witch to, like, obsessing over Jacek and stuff, and she still does keep her personality to an extent, you know, she's still strong, she still believes in herself, but her feelings for Jacek do kind of detract as a reader when you're sort of reading these emotional sort of thought process behind her, and it's just like, grow up, girl, come on, you know, it's a bit frustrating, definitely, to read. So overall, I would say this book is a decent book, and it's certainly worth a read if you're, like, into the witch, vampire, supernatural genre. There are certain similarities between this and other sort of supernatural media I've taken in. For example, the Vampire Diaries, I noticed a lot of similarities in the way that, like, witches and vampires were portrayed, and there were also differences, because obviously every sort of culture and every person has a different take on certain supernatural elements. But it was cool to see some things that I do recognise from the genre. However, I would say this is unlikely to become your new favourite. It is, however, part of a series, so you can see it says book 1. So it's going to be, I'm sure the rest of the books in the series, I think they're coming out, I think most of them are actually already written and they're going to be sort of rolled out relatively frequently, so it will be interesting to see how the series develops. I'm not sure if I would personally continue reading the series. Like, if I had the opportunity again to get an advanced reader's copy of the next book in the series, I would definitely give it a try. I can't really see myself going out and buying it, because much as I'm interested to see where this goes, I don't care enough to actually spend my money on finding out. But yeah, Dark Secret, worth a try. Thanks very much for watching. Please do like the video, drop a comment down below to say what your favourite book in the supernatural genre is, and please do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, bye bye.